Well, hello my friends, it's Shawn Petite and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Look at this beauty we're creating today, wonderful abstract piece. Here are the supplies that we're using today, and I am starting the project on an 11 by 14 MDF board, and I have literally just pulled any scrap piece of paper out of my scrap box. I have an overwhelming amount of paper scraps. And so I knew that the papers weren't going to be showing up at all. And so I just pulled anything out. There's no meaning to the papers at this point. Just laying them down and getting that texture that I absolutely love when I use paper underneath anything. And I'm putting all of that down with my Liquitex matte medium, getting a good coverage. And what the matte medium does for me is, one, it puts the papers down, but it also seals the piece and gets it ready for all the layers that we're going to be putting on. So I'm using Golden's Carbon Black and Van Dyke Brown, and I've mixed them together to get a little bit of variety so that it's not strictly black. I wanted there to be some interest, some variation, and so you can see some of that Van Dyke Brown showing up. I'm using my brayer, and this is a heavy body paint, so it's going to leave some marks. It's going to have some low spots and some high spots in the paint as it dries. But the brayer is going to give it some real good inconsistency. And when I was drying, I tore the paper because I ran my hand across it, but I loved it, so I left it, and I love it when that happens. Now that it's dry, I'm using a China marker and just making some random marks, and that's kind of the start of this process. This piece is so meaningful, and I'll share about that at the end of the video. But now I've just grabbed some papers. So I've got some vintage wallpaper, and then I only used a couple vintage wallpapers, and then I used all my scraps from my scrap box. These are jelly prints, and let's see what else. They're tissue paper jelly prints, and most of these were created in the Abstract Journey workshop. So if you see some papers and you're like, ooh, I like those, I show you how to do that in the Abstract Journey workshop. So anyway, I'm just using my papers here because I want some color. And the color has specific meaning in this piece, so does the black. And again, I'll share all of that at the end. So here's my inspirational quote, and it's, "Turn your wounds into wisdom." And oh my goodness, what a week to share. I can't wait to share the story with you. So used my charcoal pencil and just made some marks. So I put my papers down, those words down with my Liquitex matte medium, and I'm putting all of my papers down with my Liquitex matte medium. And here's some of that tissue paper. And what I love about jelly printing on tissue paper is that the pattern shows up, but what's underneath also shows up when you put it down. It's just so yummy good. And it gives you color, it gives you texture, interest. There's just so much goodness when you're able to collage your jelly prints down. And I'm using a vertical inspiration because the flowers that I end up putting on the top are floating up, and that's the wisdom. That's the wisdom floating to the top. And so I wanted to make sure that I covered up wounds because we want the wounds to heal. And I tried to make sure that the wisdom stayed visible because that's what we get from our wounds. And now I'm just going back over in specific spots because I really want to make sure not to cover up certain areas. So I'm going back with my brush and then brayering it out. And I will pick that back up in spots because some areas got too dark, and I wanted to make sure that there was some color and those papers showed up. Because that adds the interest and keeps the eye moving up into the piece and draws the story up into the piece as well. So I'm just going to kind of do the dance a little bit here, and I'm using the same. I used very little color with the exception of my papers. I used carbon black and the Van Dyke brown here, and I'm just going back and forth to get the right feel, the right look, exactly where I want it to go. Now I've grabbed some Senlier, and I'm using all the big name paints today. This is Senlier's medium body paint, and it is teal. And all the supplies will be listed on the blog, and the link to the blog is down below in the YouTube description box. And I wanted a stark contrast between the light and the dark, and there's meaning behind that. And so that's why I chose the black and the teal, because it's so different. Still allowing the colors to show through, but I wanted it to be really rough, because like life, like our wounds, they're not pretty. And I'm trying to make the bottom very opaque and not see-through, and make it go lighter towards the top. I'm using the same techniques, using my brush and then brayering it out, just so that I can be very specific about where I place that color. I have mixed a little bit of gesso in that teal just to kind of give it some variation. I wanted a little bit more color down at the bottom, and so I added those papers, and now I am going to integrate the top and the bottom with my stenciling. And I love doing that because you can bring that color up specifically in pattern when you use your stencils up into another color. And I will bring the black down into the teal, and it blends the two together so that they feel part of the same piece, so it feels cohesive, it blends. I've varied the colors a little bit. I added a little bit of gesso into that teal so that it stands out from the rest of the color. So while that's drying, I just painted a piece of copy paper black. Just used my carbon black, and I'm stenciling out some flowers because I wanted white flowers and I couldn't find the right ones, but I had the right stencils. So I stenciled out a few. Some were good, some were not so good because I had too much paint on my sponge, but the good ones I kept. And then I used part of the flowers are from the Vintage Plant book that I'm just loving right now. You know, you go through phases where you love on something. So the Vintage Plant book, these flowers are from that. And then the stenciled flowers. And I cut those out, and I'm putting those down. And they're floating up. That's our wisdom coming to the surface. Putting all of that down with Liquitex Matte Medium. So I had some tissue paper that had just general marks on it, no color or anything, and I wanted to be able to add some marks and some variety, but I didn't want to commit fully to stamping or stenciling onto the piece. So tissue paper is great that way because if I didn't like it, I just pull it up and there's no harm. You can choose exactly what you want, little tiny bits. And again, with the tissue paper, it blends right into the background so you can't even tell that it's tissue paper. So now I'm blending the top down into the turquoise, the black down into the turquoise. I wanted to see a little bit more pattern, and so I just accentuated what I had stenciled and added just a tiny bit more. This is the Mediterranean Duo stencil, and the flower stencil is the bouquet of flowers stencil that I used to stencil out the white flowers. This is my numbers 2 stencil, and I wanted just a tiny bit more interest. And the numbers represent time, the time it takes for our wounds to become wisdom. And I wanted them to be super faded. And what I should have done is I should have done them on tissue. I should have done this on tissue paper. But I didn't, and hindsight's always 20/20. So I just came back and kind of wiped that paint back a little bit so that it was faded and kind of grungy and messy. So once I started wiping that back, then what happened was, now I've got these black streaks, which I did not want, because they were looking like flower stems, and that's not what I was going for. So I came back with some teal and just kind of pushed that back a little bit. Now I really want to highlight the design of that stencil because that's really the interest in the piece, the fun part. So I'm using my charcoal pencil, and I will go through and shade absolutely everything, flowers, and then shade around each of those designs from the stencil. And now that I've got it all shaded, I'm coming back with my China marker and accentuating the black designs. And then I will shade around the outside a little bit with my black soft pastel. And then I added the word wisdom again on the piece in the flower. I just used one of the words from the sheet that's available in the resource library there. That's free to you. And that's it, my friends. Super easy project with huge meaning. I hope you stick around for the conversation at the end. Subscribe and like if you enjoyed this. Leave a comment and I will get back to you as soon as possible. And I hope to see you again soon, and I will see you next week. Well, hello, loves. Happy Sunday to you. I'm so glad you're here. So, went over pretty much everything throughout the video. The flowers are part of the vintage plant book that I've been kind of digging on recently. So I'll have that linked. And then, of course, the stencils that I used today. I think there's 3 of them. Let's see, Mediterranean Duo numbers and flower, one of the flower ones. I'll have them all linked and everything. Those will be on sale. I used a ton of fun tissue papers. Let me see just really quick. So a bunch of different tissue papers and things like that. Several of these techniques are part of the tissue paper workshop. And then part of them, most of them are from the Abstract Journey workshop where we do some jelly printing and stuff like that. So if you saw the papers and were like, oh, I love that, I have a workshop for that just in case you were interested. And that's the Abstract Journey workshop. And I'll have that linked down below too. Okie doke. So in the beginning of this piece, I put down, I did the papers in the background because I wanted that texture, and then I kind of went over it with the black and then put my words down. And I wanted them there because that was the inspiration of the piece. And that came about, I got an email. I get emails every week from you loves, and I positively love them. And I just want you to know, if I'm slow to respond, it's just because I'm getting more and more. And but I will respond back to you, and I do say a prayer over each one of those emails, just my way of being able to help, encourage, all those kinds of things. Anyway, so this particular email, one of our followers, our group, our people, was going through some devastating loss, and there's, I know you guys know how it feels when you feel helpless. Like there's just nothing I can say that will do anything, will make it better. Sometimes listening's the only thing. You don't want to say anything trite or, yeah, it'll all be fine eventually. Well, in the moment, it doesn't feel like you're going to be fine. And so I went through this email, and I just, I did my best, and it just hung with me like, how can I help? And the only thing that I know to do is pray. And but sometimes that just feels so small. And as I was, going through my day and getting my stuff done, and throughout the week, I was trying to gather some inspiration for Sunday inspiration and other pieces. And I came across this quote that said, I've already forgot it. Turn all your wounds into wisdom. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's the hope. That is the hope that we can take whatever it is, and everybody's got it. If you're human, if you're alive, you've been through loss, whether it's, actual physical loss, human, personal loss, relationship loss. Jobs, it's a loss, and we've all been through it. And if we can allow our wounds, whatever they are, however small or however big, if we can allow them to become wisdom. And I thought about what that meant, and how I have actually seen that happen with people who have gone through things that I can't even, I've been through my share, but so far I've been able to avoid a few things. And I've seen women take some of the most devastating circumstances and use it for good. They've taken their wounds and allowed it to turn into wisdom. And I just want to encourage you, if you've had and you're in the sweet spot, and you're in a good place, praise the Lord for that. And if you are in that good place, then think about how you can take whatever you have gone through. You've gone through the healing process, and how you can use that to help others, how you can use that to grow yourself, how you can use that to help the people around you, your loved ones, your relationships. I mean, there's so many ways that quote can spread. And if you're in the devastating, hurtful, hard place, hang on, because there is hope if we allow it. If we allow at some point, once we get through the healing, because I'm saying if you're in it, it's so hard to see anything else but just what's happening. But once you kind of get through the process of whatever you're going through, I hope that you will allow those wounds to give you wisdom instead of anger or bitterness or all of those things that you see daily. And healing has a process, let me say that. The grief process, and grief, sometimes we only associate with like a death, but a death can be a death in a relationship, a job. I mean, it can mean a lot of things. And so that grief process is the same. And you have to go through that process. And anger is part of that process. And that's okay. But we don't want it to end there, and we don't want to stay stuck there. And everybody's time is different. But I pray for you, if you're in that place, that you will allow your wounds to turn into wisdom. That you will be able to, at some point, see that there can be good that comes from whatever it is. And so, you know, I didn't respond back again to my person that I was talking to for a couple days, and then sent an email with the quote. And, you know, because it's hard. You just don't know what to say sometimes. And it ended up being a good thing and encouraging to the other person. So I knew that I needed to process that, because there was so much in that, and how I was feeling about it, and how I could help. And so that's how this came about. So I put the quotes in here, and I wanted to cover up the wound part, because I want that to heal. That's the healing place. And the dark is the dark devastation of whatever. And then the light that's coming. And of course it has to be turquoise light. And then the color is like the color that starts to come back into our lives after we've gone through the process. And then the flowers are the wisdom. The flowers are the bright spots that we will be able to share our own experiences with others to help them through their place. And so that is my inspiration. That is the process. That was my thinking behind every step that I did throughout this piece. And I left the wisdom visible. And then I even added another wisdom right here, because I felt like there needed to be more. More wisdom always, please, right? So that is the inspiration. And my loves, I hope that wherever you are, that you can or will allow your wounds to become wisdom, and that we can all help each other. We need each other. We need each other. We need to hear each other's stories to know that we're going to be okay in our story. So don't be afraid to share it. Don't be afraid to share where you were, what you've experienced, and because it bonds us together. When you understand that somebody else has been through what all of a sudden it changes everything. And you can share what you've been through, and how you healed, how you worked your way through, what you did, all of those kinds of things. We need each other for that, to build each other up, to build a community of strong women, strong people, and full of hope. And I hope that wherever you are, that you are able to do that, and that you can create a group like that, or that you are in a group like that. And sometimes it has to start with us, and that's why I do what I do every Sunday. All right, my loves, I hope that wasn't too heavy. It just was on me, and I had to get it out. Had to. All right, loves, I hope your Sunday is peaceful. I hope it's restful. I hope that you find wisdom and share your story. And I hope that you always, always know that you are loved.